I don't really know how to explain what happens to these teams with TF and Callista. They see everybody else losing on it, and I don't know if it's like some protagonist thing. They're like, yeah, well, that's not my Callista. Like, let me show you how it's done, and then they just like add another loss to the pile. Like, I don't know. It's crazy though.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 9, Episode 22. This is MSI Part 2 episode in the hotel rooms. Yet again, just finished another day of games, and we're starting to see some interesting trends throughout the tournament. Sorry, Europe is gone. They got kind of
sorry
cleaned
for that.
up pretty quickly.
That is an interesting trend. You're right.
We are a bit to blame ourselves as the North American representatives, but it's been fun here in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. Honestly, it's just really fun for me being back in Canada and getting to take pictures with so many fans and stuff. And like usually people don't make posters for the casters and stuff. I've seen so many Azale posters in the crowd. Is like actually really, really funny.
Yeah.
Some people yesterday had these like rub Azale's head for good luck posters, and they were like the first fans I saw when I walked in. It was like just me and them. Then they looked at me and they held up this poster. Today people had these like posters of me like photoshopped onto Timo with like holding a Canadian flag and all this stuff, and like it's pretty funny. So the fans have definitely been awesome. The venue today was insane. Like being in the venue for T1 BLG legitimately was as loud or louder than a number of world finals that I've been to. It was like actually crazy how many T1 fans were there. And it was pretty funny because like clearly it was like 90-10 or maybe 95-5 for like T1 fans to BLG fans. Like there were a fair number of BLG fans, but T1 does anything good and the place just goes crazy, and then it's like BLG gets a kill or whatever and you just hear like just like some like polite clapping. So definitely a faker gap as far as the fans were concerned, but yeah, it was really fun because obviously today was a weekend, so everyone can go, and the place was like packed all the way to the third level, so it was definitely a really, really good vibe. Been pretty awesome.
T1's the home crowd anywhere they go.
Yeah.
Yep, legit.
I was curious, Mios, is it coming through on the streams? Because I've heard different things about like different streams have different levels of crowd audio.
Oh, I haven't noticed it too much. The crowd, like there have definitely been times, and like they'll show crowd shots, and it looks pretty hype. But I'd say for the most part, I haven't been hearing it that much.
Yeah, that's too bad because it is really quite loud in there. Like even the days, like the earlier days where there was less people, like the fans were still super enthusiastic. So it's been really cool. Definitely been a great environment, and hopefully that does come through on the broadcast. It's also been just kind of interesting seeing the meta develop over now that we have quite a lot of games. Like it hasn't been that many days, but there's so many games each day. I mean, we just did back to back. Double best of 5 days, so we actually have like quite a bit of data on the patch right now, and I am absolutely a Callista blind hater, and kind of was even before MSI, but that pick is doing just horrible at MSI. Like Callista is 0-8, and every time that I can remember, maybe there was a time where it was picked as an answer, but every time that I can remember in a draft, it's picked as a blind pick. And it just feels like there's so many easy ways to answer it. Like you can just pick champions that outrange it and poke it, and it just almost always looks useless. And so to me, it's like this whole thing where people are picking it for prio and to dragon stack and do all this. And this is the logic I'm given by every coach and pro I've asked about it, is that it's like, well, it gives you 2v2 prio and it gives you the early dragons, but it's not even doing that. Like it always feels like it's just losing 2v2 and then struggling to 5v5 because you have no range. Sometimes you can, maybe pull off something good where you get some sort of all-in, like at level 6, you throw in your support and you kill them, whatever. But even like today, it was like, oh god, that the MCOY game against Dogos Aphelios, it's like you're getting hard outscaled by this Aphelios, and you're getting slammed in the 2v2, losing a plate like 2 minutes into the game. I don't know, man. It's just not it.
Yeah, I mean, either they pick Nico or Karma support or something into it and blast you, or even if you win, then they swap at 3.5 minutes anyways, and then they outscale you and it becomes something else. It's like the best thing about Kalista is that you can save your support. That's probably playing a better champion than Kalista.
Yeah, dude, there have been some pretty huge outliers this tournament so far, and I just have to say, like, I'm so glad we're on Fearless. Like, I'm glad they made the decision to just keep it the whole year after first stand, because I think it's been so interesting to watch the way the meta develops. It also opens up, I feel like the game doesn't have to be as balanced for pro play, because, a lot of the time before it would be like, if a champion is overtuned, it's going to be in every single draft, everywhere, all the time, and you're either banning it or first picking it or playing like the best matchup into it every single game. But now we're just getting to see so many different variations. You see stuff like the Camille blind pick in the last game of Gen.G versus AL, just because, like 6 other top laners are gone who probably have a good matchup into her. So I think that's been really cool, but it also leads to, I feel like, I don't really know how to explain what happens to these teams with TF and Kalista. They see everybody else losing on it, and I don't know if it's like some protagonist thing. They're like, yeah, well, that's not my Kalista. Like, let me show you how it's done, and then they just like add another loss to the pile. Like, I don't know. It's crazy though. I feel like at some point you see a champion not only losing every game, but genuinely looking useless. It's a lane bully that loses every lane and doesn't scale. And I'm just sitting there as a spectator, like, something crazy must be going on in scrims. Like, this champion must just be like running the server in scrims. Same with TF. But obviously on stage, it's a totally different story. So it's been weird to watch for sure.
TF feels like I can more see why it should be good, but it feels really hard to execute, right? Like, and I also think that a lot of times with TF, it's like, in principle, it's good, but then the drafts people are doing with TF, sometimes like when FlyQuest did it, right? And it's like you have a Cho'Gath top, and the Cho'Gath top is supposed to be kind of like this answer. I think it was into a York game, if I'm recalling it correctly. I can't actually remember, but like when you are playing and you don't have like a clear side lane carry to play to, I feel like it's really, really hard. Because to me, it's like the way the TF works is you use your power to like get someone else on your team super fed, and then they are supposed to kind of like make up for your damage. It's like in my mind how it's supposed to work, right? It's like you're playing towards your Camille or your Mbessa or whatever, and you're super slamming the side lane to the point where like your lower damage isn't as big a deal, and you can kind of just show up and gold card someone in a team fight, and then your team takes care of business. But a lot of times when people are drafting it, I feel like their comp is like pretty low damage overall, and then it seems incredibly hard to actually really be able to get anything from it. Like even if you get some sort of a little side lane advantage, it's like, well, you still have to show up in 5v5, and TF kind of really struggles, I feel like, to actually 5v5 pre almost like 3 items. Like when people get to 3 items, people are like, okay, well now you have your Roa, your Lich Bane, your Rapid Fire, and you walk forward and you gold card, and that's how you team fight, and people just constantly poke over your gold card. But it's like that's so late in the game. And then often your opponents have multiple dragons before then, and then you're like forced to fight early, and it's, I don't know, it just seems really, really hard to execute on, even though like I can kind of understand the thought process. It's just, right now it's just feeling like a way worse Talia.
I will say that 4 of the 7 picks were by European teams, 3 Caps ones, and
those losses don't even count.
And one of them was us as well. But there were some good like angles, yeah, and kind of like you're saying, like you can see how and it is like supposed to go, and theoretically, and some of the good things about it, but it is certainly very hard to like coordinate with the rest of your team and have everybody play like that to actually get the value. And then since we haven't seen any of the top 3 teams use it with T1, Gen.G.
Excuse you.
Yeah, excuse me. We're not done yet. We didn't get. I mean, honestly, we're going to jump around a lot, but I am so excited to see FlyQuest versus BLG and see how high we get.
I mean, we can talk about.
We should talk about the FlyQuest G2 match, because that's how we got
slaughter,
here.
The execution, the demolition.
It was all of those.
I mean that was awesome. I didn't expect it to be that one-sided, honestly. Like, I will say I don't think G2 is this doesn't feel like the G2 that you think of when you think of like Europe and international tournaments, right? I think a lot of people still remember G2 as like the 2019 roster that won MSI, like just Caps being mini Faker. People always call them that. And, they've had different rosters over the years, but I feel like they're known for being a creative team, kind of like almost chaotic in a way with how they play compared to the normal. But I feel like this version of G2 was not really that. And I think, they don't have as much international experience. Like, I don't know how much Scuman and Lebrov have, but I think they were having trouble keeping up, especially like, not just with FlyQuest, but with other teams as well. And they did not feel as threatening as G2 normally does.
I mean, like, I was kind of doing it as a meme on the analyst desk, but also I was kind of serious that it's like, it's been a long time since EU has been that good, right? And I think that it's like, yes, G2 as an organization is, really, really impressive. They have done so much. They have accomplished more than any other Western org, like easily. They won MSI. They made it to World Finals. They took down, some of the best Eastern teams in best of fives a number of times. Like, they had that aura about them that they could actually win the tournament, right? Like, they were really, really frightening. But it has been quite a while. Like, how long has it been since that has actually been the reality? NA versus EU, the last 2 years, EU is 3-13 against us. Like, that is not close, right? And so it's like, yes, G2 does have to be respected, and I think Caps still played really, really well at this tournament, but it looked like Caps in 4 wards for most of the tournament. Like, it did not look like he had a team. And I think that, like, as much as I wouldn't have been like mind blown if G2 beat us, like, I thought it was definitely within the realm of possibility. I thought FlyQuest were pretty heavy favorites. And I think that it has been like a while since it has felt like EU has been on a similar level, right? And EU is definitely struggling. As much as like I see their fans saying, "Oh, well, K Corp would have done better, or this team would have done better, that team would have done better." It's like, well, these are the teams that won, these are the teams that qualified, and that's how it's been going for a couple of years now for EU, which obviously sucks for them. It's a tough pill to swallow, especially then having your number 1 seed get like absolutely blasted by CFO is going to feel even worse. But that's the reality right now. Doesn't mean that, Europe can't come back and have much better worlds, can't improve, whatever. But that has been the international results for years now, for a couple of years at least.
On the feeling that Medios was describing, I was going to say, they actually have been showing this, the tweet from Dylan Falco when they like made the changes for this version of G2. And the tweet is about, the previous roster of G2 had really explosive, potential, but they would also make, have lower lows basically. And then this roster is supposed to be, more controlled and eliminate some like the negative sides as well. And like their intention when they did do these was like, oh, we're going to do this, towards international success. And so it kind of has accomplished that, I guess, that more controlled feeling, but it has not accomplished and severely undershot where they wanted to be as far as like the international success. Then I
even
guess
regional though, right? They lost the last 2 splits in a row, and they have been running that region for a long time.
And even regionally. And so, it's like, it's a case of you don't know how good you had it until it's gone, I guess. A little bit of that as well. I mean, obviously, there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that we have no idea about as far as like inside the team and all the choices and everything. But from some of the stuff that's gone around, that does seem what it's like.
Yeah, and I always question when teams make big roster decisions after an international event, because on one hand, it's like, okay, a lot of the time, say you're the best in your region, well, that doesn't mean a whole lot when you play against the best in the world, because most of the time, pretty much all the time, the Eastern regions have been a lot better, and you kind of get exposed for problems you didn't know you had and whatnot. And a lot of times when you try to fix them, it can create like a lot of friction in the team, because it's not always obvious what's going wrong. When you play against these really good Korean and really good Chinese teams, it's like you might not even know why you lost. You just get completely smacked, and it's like, well, what just happened? It felt like we couldn't do anything and we lost. They were just everywhere or whatever. You know, their drafts were too good. And so then you want to fix the problem, but a lot of the time it's not so clear cut, and you might actually end up being worse in your attempt to fix it, right? It's like you get rid of some of your strengths in your attempt to like clear up your weaknesses. And I don't know. I'm only on the outside. I don't really know the deal with the team, but it did feel like G2 before was a lot more like, even if they had low lows, I feel like the high highs were worth it. Yeah. And I feel like you really need those kind of those risk taking moments or whatnot, because for a long time, two of the top European supports who would always go international would be like Hillisang and Mickey X, and I feel like they're the kind of guys who like, yeah, every once in a while they'll run it down extremely hard, but I think you just kind of have to accept that, and obviously you try to not do that, but I don't think the answer is like, okay, you know, we don't want any risk of looking horrible, so we're just going to play like really controlled, safe or whatnot, because that a lot of times that's easier to play against, and you're playing against these teams that are just like, they're doing that too, but just way better. And it looked like G2 just kind of like lost their identity that they've always kind of been known for.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I always felt like G2 was so fun to watch and so scary to play against because their players kind of just felt like they were going to play hyper aggressive. They were going to be in your face. They were doing, you know, when you think about like the iconic G2 picks, it's like a Kali Silas and like Pike Top and all these wild things where, yeah, sometimes they did have those games where they ran it down. G2 at their absolute peak would still lose to what was then called the wildcard regions at times, right? Like G2, even the old roster before this event, was 2-4 versus Vietnam. Like they would lose to those teams, but then they would turn around and beat T1. Or they'd like absolutely run it down one game, but then the next game they'd absolutely pop off, right? Like they had that confidence just kind of keep going at you. And I felt like G2 in this event looked very reserved. Like at times, like I hate to use this term, but at like times it felt like they were doing the whole like play to not lose instead of playing to win type of thing, you know, where you're just like, oh God, like I don't want to be the one to like to throw the game, so I'm just not going to engage. I'm just going to sit back. And that to me felt like we've seen that a lot from NA in the past. Like I felt like a lot of the TSM rosters when they had gone. And that was like this discussion that we always had year after year where it was like, okay, well, why is C9, maybe if C9 isn't even doing as well like regionally, why are they always better internationally? And it was always kind of like, well, they play with more confidence. Like they're going to go out and try some shit and not just kind of like try to draft scaling and sit back and like hope the opponent makes some mistakes. So definitely is a tough one. And it's going to be rough for the like current G2 roster because of course everyone is going to be calling for their heads and, you know, wanting, you know, the old G2 back and stuff and wanting different players in. So I definitely feel for them in that way, but it was definitely a tough end. But the other side of that is it was really great from FlyQuest. You know, FlyQuest, I think, definitely heavily outperformed. I think, you know, 4 out of 5 roles looked significantly better to me. Quad, I think, has been having a bit of a rough tournament. I don't think he's been, like, horrible, but I don't think Quad has really looked... I don't know. I don't think he's looked himself. Like he hasn't really had any big games. He has had some like good moments and stuff. I think his Rise game, he was laning well against Caps on the Casio. Like even though Caps had the Casio counterpick, I think he laned well. But I think in general he has kind of been a bit of a weak point for FlyQuest, and that's kind of like my major concern going forward. Is like he has been looking kind of weak. And then Whipple is Whipple. Whipple's going to have some monster games, then he's going to run it down. Like, that's just kind of what you get. Like, kind of like what you're talking about. Hilly, you know, and Mickey and Whipple. I feel like they're kind of cut from the same cloth in that way. Whipple's going to play his picks and play his way, and it's either going to be amazing or it's going to be horrible. But, yeah, Quad, I think, is normally so consistent for them. So I'm a little bit concerned about that going forward, where every mid laner left is going to be a beast, right? Like, you know, I think that BLG is beatable, but you have Knight, so... I hope Quad can kind of play well, and yeah, I mean overall though, FlyQuest definitely looking good, and Inspired was slamming Skewmond.
Yeah,
like, that was crazy.
Inspired played so well. This guy is just an absolute beast, and I think you mentioned the BLG series, and I'm with you that I think we can win, but I pretty much have the same reservation about mid. I think, you know, Knight doesn't have the best team around him right now. I think that. BLG right now to me feels like it's Knight and Ben, and that's it. The rest of their team is kind of invisible. But that being said, they are really, really good. So that's still a huge threat. And I actually feel like Inspired will gap Beishuan. He's not looked very good this tournament. His game against Owner just earlier today was rough, and it's not even just not playing perfectly, but he made some really bizarre mistakes. Like the one play I remember where he's with Ben and they're getting a pick on Faker, and Ben literally has like a fully charged Scion Q about to hit him in the head, and he eased Faker out of it, not even into a wall. It was just like, dude, what are you doing? That is insane. That is such a bronze mistake.
Yeah.
And I know he's new, and like international pressure is a real thing, and so not everyone's going to perform their best. But yeah, I think he's been a pretty big weak point for BLG.
Yeah.
So I feel like Inspired, like he's looking real good.
There's no doubt in my mind that Inspired is a better jungler. And you're right. There is a lot of pressure on Beichuan because, like, look at the star names on his team around him, and he came in from Thunder Talk. So there is a lot of pressure on him, and especially at international. But I think that's one of our best things about FlyQuest is our players look so like calm and locked in, and it's a big benefit of the team sticking together from last year. So I'm really glad that they did that. I was gonna say also Masu deserves a lot of props. Masu and Busio have been smurfing like our young North American bottom lane. They are looking so good. It really fills my heart with happiness to see them perform on stage. And I yelled so loud I like messed up the mic when they were playing G2, and he I don't know, chased them out of the Baron and then took their Baron. I guess it was kind of a steal, kind of a like
we'll call it a steal.
It's ours now. Yeah,
I would say it was a steal. It was like a 3v5 Baron contest. Like that was insane.
But they forced Maokai to flash out, and then Maokai's sitting over the edge just like watching it, and he's like. I could feel he was like, no, how do I do now? Let me back in. But that 3v5 was so cool to watch. Like those three showed no fear. They played it really well. Inspired uses GA really well. That series was so good.
Busio Bard game.
Yeah. Dude, his escapes.
My man ran it down immediately, level 1 in the 2v2, gives a double kill over to Corky, and then just slams the map, no mercy, just running around, blasting everyone.
Classic Bard.
There's a classic Bard. Run it down in the 2v2. All right, see you later, bud. Like, good luck, Mr. AD Carry. I'll see you in 30 minutes. Just runs around the map. That was pretty sick. I mean, especially that there was like, I thought he was playing really well in general and putting pressure everywhere, but especially that one top lane play where Caps is trying to kill him on the Aurora, and he like barely survives, delays, buys all his time, flashes into his portal over the wall. Caps tries to follow him. He like double ults them both as they come over, then like sidesteps a Q from Caps and stuff and survives. And it was just like, oh my god, like you just did it to him.
Yeah, Caps is tilted. I feel like anytime you follow Bard through his own portal, like you're not thinking clearly. That almost never ends well. Although, I don't know. I feel like I'd have to practice tool that one because in my mind, if a Bard doesn't have flash and you're Aurora and you're like that close to him and you're just mashing Q out of the Bard ult, I feel like it should be basically guaranteed. But Caps tried, like, I think he flashed.
Behind, wasn't he? Because I thought that the Bard ult landed like as Caps arrived.
I would have to check it again, but
yeah.
I thought when I saw it, it looked like Caps was worried about getting Bard stun, so he flashed first and then tried to Q, which then gave Busio, time to juke it. So, yeah, I don't think Caps actually played that great. And a lot of times it can be, a variety of things. I think sometimes if you're in that position where it feels like there's not a lot of pressure on your team, you do sort of overplay things and you go for stuff you shouldn't. But I don't know if that was the only case. Like his death on Castio against Bwipo was seriously reportable. He took like 4 turret shots while he was ahead and just died. So, yeah, I think just G2 in general didn't look like their normal selves, and maybe this roster just needs more time to get it together. But yeah, not the big scary G2 we usually think about.
I think the question with all these things, especially, I mean, not that like Caps is old by any means. I think he's like 25 or something like that. But when a player has been around for a really long time, people think about, oh God, like what if they're thinking about retiring? Oh God, what if they're going to leave? And like Caps clearly just wants to win, right? And I don't know if this was like confirmed or just a rumor, but I remember reading how, he took a pay cut to like stay with G2 and, to try to win and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, if it's not working out, I think definitely a lot of G2 fans are feeling nervous about like, okay, well, if G2 can't get the pieces around him to make it work internationally, like is Caps going to go somewhere else where he feels that he does have a better chance? So definitely will be interesting to see what happens with G2 over the next year or so, but was super pumped for FlyQuest to continue the proud NA tradition of slamming EU, and it's been looking good. Been a lot of fun to be on the winning side of that rivalry for the last couple of years because we were taking L's for many years. I remember for a long time we had like at one point I remember them bringing it up at Worlds, and we had maybe like a 30% win rate or something like that against EU. And so for it to go from that to over the last couple of years. The stat that I was told, 13-3, like that is a crazy turnaround. So definitely been really, really fun for me to be on the other side of the rivalry and seeing our teams doing well. So that was a hype match. We could talk about the one that maybe just some of the ones that also happened. Gen.G AL was like an insane series. So much fun to watch. I really loved that because we got all kinds of different picks. And honestly, coming to this event, I think I probably said it on the dive, but I was really worried we were going to have kind of a repeat of first stand where it was like you go into first stand, HLE is just so much better than everyone that there's zero tension. Like HLE is just playing with their food, slamming everyone, doing for fun picks and winning the series, no problem. And I was kind of worried that Gen.G was going to do the same thing here. So the fact that we had like an absolute banger 5-game series between the two teams, the top seeds, really made it very, very exciting for me. And I was just like hyped that it worked out that way. And we got like super cool picks and stuff like that coming through as well. We got to see the Smolder top, which like I love Smolder. And Cassante is like one of the only playable top lane matchups in the whole game. But if someone blinds Cassante and you can play Smolder into it, it's actually a really good matchup. Like that was really cool to see from Flandre. We got the Shen support, which I think was really, really cool. So it's been fun to see some of these picks get bust out and actually like look good.
Yeah, and some of the ones that even if you don't think it's a good spot, like Shanks Akali, I was really worried when I saw that locked into Talia and Vi. But that man was so clean with this movement. Like the first fight up behind Grubbs, he's like dodging away from Rakan knockup, dodging away from Talia shoves, getting it up. And he had like 6 kills on this Akali. And I was like, oh my God, it is so hype. I saw like, it was really fun to watch AL push Gen.G. And even though people had been talking about, oh yeah, Gen.G, because they only had the single best of 5 in playoffs and like there was no LCK like finals, and everything. And, maybe they'll be rusty and they start tournaments slow fairly often. And, after their series versus G2, what's it going to look like? I was like, oh, wow. The AL series versus Gen.G really did deliver. And AL pushed them so well, and had really good performances in so many of the games. Yeah, I was very happy with that series going full 5.
Yeah, I mean, we saw so many different strategies and team comps throughout the series, which again, I feel like I just keep coming back to it with like how sick Fearless really is, where like you saw pretty much between Flandre and Keen, like it wasn't what you see a lot of time where it'll be like, either tank versus tank or one guy's a carry player, the other guy's a tank player. It was like they were actually playing both sides of the matchup. It would be like Flandre's Rumble versus Keen on Ornn, or like Keen's Camille against Flandre's Gragas. So I think that's just so sick how to truly be the best team, it feels like you have to understand the game better as a whole because you can't just run one draft. But it actually feels weird looking back being like, hey, dude, I just won this tournament and during playoffs, I played Gragas and Rek'Sai the entire time. I was like looking up some of my old games and there was like a 30 game period in season 6 where I only played Gragas or Rek'Sai. And like, I didn't think of anything at the time, but looking back, it's just like, wow, that's weird, In one series, you have to play more than that nowadays, even if you get 3-0'd. Yeah. So I think it's so fun just seeing all the different variety. And it can also lead to like, I do feel like a lot of times we see like huge draft gaps. in these
Especially
games.
Game fives.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard as hell. I don't fault teams for getting dizzy during the draft, but even in this Gen.G AL one, I found myself predicting wrong. Like games 3 and 4 specifically. When I saw Gen.G's draft, I was like, dude, when's the last time a Ziggs with a mage mid has won? Like Ziggs 80 carry with a mage mid. I feel like that comp never wins. It's like you don't have sustained damage. You can't get through tanks. AL had Scion, Trundle, and I thought it was going to be totally free for AL, but then somehow Gen.G just makes it work with this comp. And so I thought that stuff's just super cool. And then the same thing, game 4, I'm like, dude, these guys are playing Smolder top. Surely that's not a winnable pick. And then they won with it. So
Yeah,
I don't know. We're just seeing so many cool things,
I think it's
so many
good that
novel
it's not
things,
there.
right? It's like, how often do you see Smolder top against, or really between like two of the best teams in the world, right? Like number 1 China versus number 1 Korea playing Smolder top. I don't think it was on anyone's bingo card. So it's just been so awesome seeing all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I do think game 5s, like to me, there have been like there's all these incredible series. A lot of them have been pretty one-sided game 5s. And a lot of times I do think it is because in game 5, drafting is so hard. The coaches obviously are somewhat limited by your players' champion pools, but building a really good draft that is actually cohesive and plays to your players' strengths and all of this stuff is so hard in game 5s. And I do think sometimes these coaches are coming away with like a big edge for their team in a game 5, which I think is, sometimes taking these series that were really, really close and making that like final game be a bit of a kind of like a blowout situation. But yeah, no, I just love it. I mean, it's been so fun. And I do think there's even more room for creativity, right? Like we're seeing different people approaching it with different strategies. Some teams are doing like, trying to do early takeaways. Like I thought one thing that was really smart, I thought in the G2 series, I really liked that they actually just early picked this Casio, because it's like not only are you getting a good matchup, but then you no longer have to ban Casio against quad for the whole rest of the series, right? So like some of these like must ban champs, if you can just play them early, you're freeing up a ban to then do like target bans and stuff like that for the whole rest of the series, which I think can be really, really valuable. We also saw in the MKOI series, like something that I think, may become kind of like more like meta, so to speak. It didn't actually work for them, but then, when we had, I guess it was it the rest game or was it it was when Driver came back in game 4. Basically, like a lot of his go-to champions were already gone, right? So he had 4 champions left that he had played this split, and they triple banned him. So they did Gragas, Jax, and Ornn ban, where like the other, say, 4 champions or whatever he had played had already been played. So the only champion he had left that he had actually played this split was Set. He ended up playing Cassante and doing completely fine, but I just think like that kind of thing is kind of interesting, and I feel like more teams are going to be trying to do that to like put pressure on players who have like smaller champion pools and stuff. So yeah, it's been really cool.
It makes it almost like a different game with Fearless added on top, because there's such a different level of strategy, and I feel like at least a lot of the skill level of the pro players is closer now between like, oh my god, the very best performing player and even like some of the middle pack players at a tournament. I feel like the gap used to be insane, whereas like one guy just had super duper crazy mechanics or something like that, or maybe there were 1 or 2 or something, and then there would like be a bigger difference. I feel like that has closed, and so the strategy of which champions you're picking matters even more because of that, and then way more because of Fearless on top of it. And so it is made it, I feel like, really, really interesting, and more like a strategy game in a lot of these cases. And I actually kind of feel like something that might happen is in the next couple of years, like we keep seeing more and more best of series go further. I feel like with Fearless, we're going to get way more full 5-game series or 4-game series at the most. I feel like 3-0s are going to get less and less frequent with the way that Fearless works and the strategy that kind of has to go into it. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, well, I think a huge part of it too is when it's not Fearless, right? I think a lot of the time what happens is you do play the same matchups over and over and over and over again, right? So when you go up against a Korean team, say the meta is like Renekton versus Cassante, and you'll be playing both sides of this matchup for the entire series because they're not the most OP champs in the game, so they're not getting banned, but they're the best leftover ones. And so you could be a player who's just like very good at refining these matchups. And I think there is something to that where it's really interesting to be able to, just make the absolute most out of these matchups. We see that happen a lot with like Corki Azir, Xayah Kaisa, these ones where, you're playing both sides of it so many times. And because I think there is skill expression there. But to me, I think you have to think about the viewer experience the most, because it is an esport, right? It should be fun. And I think it's way more fun when you go into a series and you just have no idea what you're going to get. And you pretty much see novel things almost every single time. And I do think, the cost is that pro players are going to have to be a bit more, like, their skills has to be wider, because they have to play different types of champions, a whole lot more champions, and, even play different roles on the team. Not necessarily like you're not playing a mid laner, but there's a huge difference between playing a frontliner, playing someone who wants to flank, playing say you're just playing like a full on range top, like Smolder or something.
That you were talking about was a perfect example. Flandra is like a Scion, and then he's a Smolder, and then he's a Gwen or whatever, right?
I love that though personally, because for me, no offense, Kobe, but I'm a bit of an anti one trick when it comes to League, in the sense that like I think the game is best experienced when you just appreciate the game as a whole, right? Like I've been a jungle main for like 14 years, but I love playing off roles. I think it's super cool. Like I see somebody pop off on Ambessa and I go on a Smurf and I'm like, I'm going to queue it up and I'm going to feed my brains out, but I'll learn something. And I just think it's super fun, like learning new champions, just seeing everything there is to see. Because then in a way you have more understanding for your teammates and like what their experience is like. And as a jungler, when ganks hurt the most too. So I think it's just super cool. I think anything that tests people's entire skill set of League as a whole is only a good thing. And I love that we get to see more of that.
Yeah. No offense taken. I mean, I think the key thing you said there is queue up on a Smurf. Because
I like my LP. I'm not trying to brief it. I have a top lane account.
Always in there for some rank flex.
Because I do, exactly. I play on flex. I'm like, I'll play any role but jungle with my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm like, I just got done on a hard shift, hard day's work, in solo queue. Like I'm grinding away jungle every day. I can't be playing jungle for fun with you guys.
Can't be back in the mines.
Don't get me back in the mines here.
Some fresh air. He's got to play some Fiora blind pick top.
Yeah, so I play mainly solo lanes, and it really did kind of like reignite the like fun aspects of League for me, but when I lock down and I play solo queue, I'm like, all right, back to jungle. I'm back in the mines. I'm back on like Volibear. If Volibear is banned or taken, then it's like
costume,
it's either Nocturne or Jarvan or
keyboard. And
I'm sweating.
Time to lock in.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with you, and that kind of is the difference between non-fearless, versus fearless drafts, and then being a one trick or being one like Canyon or Tarzan or something that just like plays everything, which is so cool because then you get all that variety.
I also really strongly believe that there are a lot of champions that are just like under prioritized in pro play that people don't really think about. And because Fearless forces you to experiment with new champions and try different things, I think that can help to push things to the forefront and make them more popular, right? Like even a champion like Yorick, I don't know if it would have really gotten that level of popularity if Fearless wasn't around. Like people used to just, I feel like, straight up refuse to play some of these different playstyle champions. And so I think that's really cool. I really loved...
Props to Merwin, by the way, for pulling out the Aurelia counter into the Yorick.
Winning with Aurelia is crazy. That champion is so hard to actually win with when it comes to competitive games because, like you saw in that game, he's winning his lane, and then, there's Nocturne, and I'm gone. So that was really cool to see, for sure. Azael, I want to follow up. You were saying you think more champs can be played. What's your number one champ right now, if you were a pro coach, that you would get your team to play? What champion do you think is just sleeper?
Well, so it got played a little bit today. I was going to say Shen. I feel like Shen has been pretty undervalued to me. I think it actually has some pretty good matchups to champions that are popular in the meta. And I think because like when you look at the bans at MSI, it's such a focus on denying globals, right? Like oftentimes we'll see like first three bans is like Talia, Pantheon, like Rise, TF, champions like this that are just getting Chan banned out. And I think Shen answers those picks, very, very well. Mbessa, relatively popular in the meta. Shen has a very strong lane against it. A lot of these champions I think you actually can do quite well against. Even some of the blind picks like Sion, Shen is actually quite good into. Has a really good lane into a lot of tanks. Very good into Ornn if people want to play that style as well. And I think it can help facilitate some of the really aggressive dive comps that people want to play. And I also think it fits really well into some of like the disengage comps if you're actually playing into dive. Like if you're playing into like Ari Vi and stuff like this, champions that like need to hit this threshold to actually like one shot your carry or they just are useless and lose the fight. Stand United is a crazy answer into that kind of stuff, and I do think it's kind of undervalued. I thought a perfect example of like a great Shen spot was actually the CFO versus Koi series. I loved where they actually picked it in game number 2. They're playing against TF and Bessa. Like not only, like I said, is it a good early matchup into the Mbessa, like yes, you're eventually going to get outscaled, but by then you have Titanic Hydra and you just one-shot the waves, so who cares? You just don't fight them. It's also really good into TF as far as like being able to actually answer TF going for you on dives, as long as you know that's a possibility. You save Spirit's Refuge, you can actually block the gold card, you can block gold cards for your teammates in fights, and anytime TF is actually trying to ult somewhere on the map and make a play elsewhere, you can answer with Stand United, so it even really enabled Honku to play super aggressive on the rise. So for me, that's one pick I think is like undervalued. I don't know if it's like sleeper because it's getting played a little bit, but I think that's something that's really good. I think Mundo is also actually quite good in a lot of drafts, especially these drafts where people are going relatively low damage comps and don't have high percentage damage. Like when people are playing stuff like Ari Vi Jin and stuff, if you have a Mundo top, like that champion becomes invulnerable to damage at a certain point. So to me,
I would love to see Mundo top. I think right now the meta has really seemed like tank tops are just so strong because it's been like Sion, Cho'Gath, some Ornn. That's more of like a counter pick. Like we saw when CFO tried blinding Ornn, that did not end well. But
that
it seemed like these tanks.
Though I'm not gonna lie, Rest was trolling on the Ornn.
Yeah, he was.
That was against the T1 game, right?
Yeah,
he did W max like instead of Q max. Like didn't go like mana flow ban, didn't go like Warden's Mail early, didn't buy tabbies till like 20 minutes. Went God, I keep spacing out on the name of this item. The like AoE damage and that it heals you for people around you.
Unending Despair.
Yes, yeah. Unending Despair. He rushed Unending Despair against the Jace with W max Ornn. Like that brother was trolling. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, definitely. But that just was one example. My pick that I want to see is set top. The only time we've seen it pretty much was Whippo, like in that one game against C9 where he picked it as a counter to Gwyn, which I don't know if that's even like Set's best matchup. But in my mind, if a team's blind picking Sion and you're playing Set, like you have the most teamfight threat of all time. If you just get an angle where you can ult Sion into the backline, that almost kills the entire team outright with just the ult. And then I think that the Overlord's Bloodmail is so insane on Set right now. Like I've been playing a ton of Set top on my top lane account. And I had a game the other day where I got like a 4.5k true damage W late game. It's just like, he has so much damage.
By the way.
It one-shot somebody from full.
Yeah.
And obviously like, there is counterplay to him, like his stuff is dodgeable, but I don't know. I feel like there could be a spot for him. He seems like he does a ton of damage, and like his items are good, Stridebreaker into Bloodmail. So I'm curious why no one has tried him. Maybe he has some weakness that I'm not seeing, but I think he could work.
Yeah, absolutely. We had 2 more series today. We're not going to talk about every series that happened because obviously there was a ton this week and some of them are pretty far back. But today we also had the CFO MKOI series that I did touch on, that one Shen game that I really, really liked. This was one that I honestly, going into it, I thought that CFO could win, but I thought that MKOI would win, if that makes sense. Because CFO, I think, is like a legitimately good team. I definitely did not think it would look this one-sided. MKOI did get one game. You know, we saw the Aurelia counter pick that come out. That was really, really hype. It was also into rest, though, which I think no shade or some shade, whatever. I think Driver has just been way better. Driver has been way better to me, and it hasn't been close. So honestly, I was really surprised that they even subbed him in. And then, you know, he went with the blind pick, Yorick. Mirwin slammed him with the Aurelia. Like, I think that part was really cool for me, though, because I had talked about that a number of times when blind pick Yorick started becoming popular in NA. That is, like, I've played a lot of Yorick. I think that is maybe, like, the worst feeling matchup I have ever played of, like, any champion. Like, it feels so unplayable to the point where even when you're, like, thousands of gold ahead, you still feel like you're going to lose the 1v1 against Aurelia. It's like every time you're spawning ghouls, you're just giving passive stacks and he's one-shotting them.
Did you see Finn's tweet on it?
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, where he was talking about use the early levels to push.
I mean, I don't agree. I've also watched, like, because I was playing a lot of Yorick, I was watching a lot of, like, Challenger Yoriks play and stuff like that and talking to some one tricks and whatnot. And even all the really high-level Yoriks that I talked to all agreed that, like, this is the worst matchup in the game and, like, unplayable, and it's their permaban and stuff. So I did see it. You know, Finn was saying that basically Yorick gets the push level 1, so, like, you just don't have to interact and everything. And that he felt that, like, post 6 that you can kind of, like, out-sustain DPS the Aurelia. That has definitely not been the experience that I have played or that I have watched in high-level Challenger games. To me, it's just like once Aurelia has full passive stacks and she's auditing you with whether it's Conqueror, Lethal Tempo, whatever, fully stacked, it's like I don't really care what the Maiden is doing. You are not killing that person, like, especially when they're on Blade of the Rune King. It's like, and then, you know, if you go Bramble early to try to negate some of the healing, which a lot of people do in Pro, then you're going to have Triforce probably a lot later than Blade of the Rune King is going to be finished for the Aurelia. So definitely has not been my experience. But what I will say is, like you were saying, Mios, it's really hard to actually close games on Aurelia, and I think team fighting is really, really hard on Aurelia. Like, you have to be very, very skilled to be able to pull that off. So I thought they played around it well, but I do think it's a cool counter pick, and I feel like it is extremely hard to play for the Yorick. But that being said, there's a lot of good answers into Yorick, and even though I know statistically its win rate is not that bad for as a blind pick, some of those games are not about Yorick at all. Like Sion, also, I think amazing pick into Yorick. I was shocked that Doran picked it into Bin in that game that we saw today. I mean, they won that game. Yorick technically got a dub, but like
it is criminal that Doran got a win for that performance. That was one of the worst performances I've seen from a top player on a top team. That was so crazy. It's just like level 1 even, he just walks into the enemy jungle. Like, I don't know if he saw Sion somewhere else, but it wasn't even Sion there. It was just Poppy and Talia, and the dude just face checks them. It's like, what if that was Sion in the bush with a full charge Q? You're Yorick. Like, you can't get out. You can't fight anyone. Like, what is the goal here? So I don't know. Maybe he saw Sion somewhere else and got baited into it, but that was just so suspicious. And then he's in the lane swap, and he's just walking up into a Callista Renata, gets killed, and it's just like surprise Pikachu, like, oh my god, I didn't know they'd kill me. I thought I could just 1v2 them.
Buddy, you won.
And then the rest of the game, it did not get much better. Like, I guess he got a couple KP toward the end, but this dude was trolling every single play. He's just running it down, and then his team is winning all the same. It felt like one of those Sulky games where you just can't lose no matter what. You got like the Smurfs on your team, like all Challenger Smurfs or something. But yeah, that was crazy. And then the start of his Ornn game too, like, I was ripping my hair out watching Doran play. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He kind of got it together toward the end, but oh my god, that was so crazy.
Yeah,
I could not believe that.
The game 1 you're talking about, where he was like trolling and didn't really have to do anything. I thought that they then won because BLG were trolling harder. Like, Beichuan was mega trolling, and Elk, when the Callista and the Renata like ults, and they're going for 4 people, and you just like, Bin has no health anymore. Bin's under tower with like 100 health left on Sion. I think Beichuan was already either dead or also out of there. And then Elk like full sends it too, and he like hops in there and throws on in there. And I was like, what in the heck? Did they lose their minds? Like, what is going on? There were multiple plays where, like, game number one, I thought BLG, they started out actually good with their swap, and they got those, early kills with their swap. Like, and you're like, oh, wow, the Kalista Renata actually got some early kills here with Poppy. Like, this is probably a good spot for BLG. And then those fights, though, they just like absolutely lost their minds. So I feel like that game was insane to watch.
It really was.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the performance from BLG today, I was really shocked at their drafts mostly, because I thought that in games 1 and 2, like the first 3 picks were so good for BLG. Game 1 was Talia, Poppy, Sion, just like insanely strong meta champs. It's like, all right, you got like crazy picks. How can you round this one out? They go, how about a Kalista? And it's just like, no, not that. Anything but that. I feel like any other champion, and they have a way better chance of winning this game. Like, Kalista's just way too free loss. And then game 2, it was like the same thing. It's like, okay, we got Annie Wukong Rumble, this crazy dive comp. How about Ezreal? And I don't know what it is with Ezreal. Maybe it's just tanks being played, and like everyone's so tanky. But this champion has looked so useless.
I mean, it was against Ornn Braum.
Yeah, but like, I don't know what he would be useful against. I feel like Ezreal has looked completely irrelevant this whole tournament, and his win rate's been very low as well. I think Doggo got a win on him today.
Still. I will say that. Like,
I mean, I guess he won't die, but I don't know. If I had an AD carry Prialis, he'd be way down. Like,
yeah,
like maybe just above Kalista. So I didn't love that. And then, yeah, I don't know. It felt like a very uncharacteristically poor performance from Elk today.
Yeah. Not
really sure what was up with that.
I mean, game 1 was definitely like things start going bad, and I felt like they looked a little bit frustrated because they kept having like, there's this play top lane where they lose their minds, and Elk is going in, flashing in, and all that. But at the same time, there was like multiple people on T1 that have like 5% health or even less at times. And they even had that bot lane fight, over by bot lane Tribrush, where they're like chasing after Owner, and then Owner turns around and stuns as Faker arrives and gets the shockwave to get a kill before Bailout can save, BLG. And, all of these moments where it just felt like T1 was so in sync and like pulling it off perfectly, where they're like stopping everything that BLG is doing, and BLG just like keeps having, these almost kills that they can never get. And when you play those games, it's so frustrating because you miss out on one kill by this much, and then you miss out on the next kill by that much, and you're like, well, if I got the last one, I would have had more damage because I would have had gold, and I would have killed this guy for sure, and then the game would have snowballed. And it just kind of felt like one of those situations where they're getting more and more frustrated, and they're just like, I have to kill him.
Yeah, I think I could see it like break in that bot one that you're talking about, because that one they had a really good position too, because they got the Poppy ult out on Faker, and so the Orianna was so far away. And then I know these moments because I greed this all the time when they're chasing them through that Tribrush, and they could have killed Owner, but the Poppy decides to go after Carrier also, because he's like, you guys got this. You could kill that Pantheon with like a couple hundred HP left, right? When you are so sure your teammates have this kill already secured, and you go on to the next one before it's actually completed. I have been there. I have felt that. So, Faker then arriving at the perfect time to turn it back around. Owner lived actually too the entire time after the shockwave. I could definitely see that tilting, to your point.
Yeah. Honestly, like on the desk, at first I was thinking, okay, this is gonna be a banger series, gonna be really, really close. As soon as I saw game 1, I was like, I'm changing my prediction as the sweep. Like, I thought it was gonna be a sweep after that. I thought T1 was playing way better, and I think Dorian has been really good lately. And when he didn't have to contribute literally anything at all to game 1, and the rest of the team was just like super smurfing, I thought in the 4v4s and 4v5s and whatnot, like they were going crazy. I just thought that it was curtains, it was wraps. Like Faker on the Orianna, that play around Otacon where they get Otacon, and then he bases, he TPs, and he goes in on this like solo flank thing on Orianna behind the tier 2 in top lane and gets a triple kill and stuff. It's like, all right, come on. Like when Faker's even just smurfing like that, it was definitely pretty crazy.
That game 1 from Faker was that's the legendary faker that people
Oh,
think
yeah.
about. Like, that was such an insane performance by him, especially because I felt like the entire series he was just getting jumped on by BLG. It was like
Remand.
almost every play was him getting jumped on by the entire team, somehow slipping out of it with phase rush and alt, and just playing perfectly defensive, and then coming out ahead every single time. That was peak faker, and
Yeah.
that is just, it's such a treat to see that.
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely smurfing it. Game 2, BLG got a pretty big advantage. Like, they did obviously have much more kind of like early game focus. I thought that T1's draft like hard outscaled, where they have Rom, they have Ornn, they have
Victor.
Zin and Victor. It was like super scaling. And BLG's draft was like all about kind of their upfront burst, their engage, right, with like Rel, Annie, Wukong, and the Rumble and whatnot. And so I felt like they really had to push their advantage. They actually created a couple thousand gold lead early on. But I will say, and I don't know, I talked about this on the desk too. I'm not sure if this was like, Elyoye did this interview after they played against BLG and lost, and he was saying how it was like really hard for him to play like normal against the Asian teams because basically it's like that intimidation factor, and you get nervous and you start doubting yourself. It's like, oh, this is the right play, but they're so good. Like, what if they stop us? What if they anticipate it? Maybe I shouldn't do it. You're kind of like getting in your head. And I felt like when BLG played against MKOI, and in BLG in a lot of their games, obviously it was lower level competition that they're playing against, but I felt like when they got a gold lead, they were so suffocating in the MKOI series and in play-ins and whatnot. Like, they were just trashing teams when they got any sort of a gold lead. And they were also so hyper-focused on stacking dragons. And so I thought it was so weird that in that second game against T1, they had a more early game focus comp. They had a gold lead, and they just like weren't showing up for dragons. Like, there was this one play, I can't remember if it was the second dragon or the third dragon, but where Faker was pushing top lane, and Bin is bot lane in Rumble, and he TPs straight from bot without even basing, straight up towards top to answer the wave from Victor. As soon as he's TPing, Faker's already basing, and then Faker and Keria spellbooks over to TP, and they double TP bot, and they immediately go bot with I think it was Owner, I can't remember, but there was 3 of them. They go bot, they kill Knight, and then they get Dragon, and it was like, I thought it was so strange to see him like with dragon spawning, with an early game comp, with a gold lead, TP away from bot lane, like away from the objective and stuff. And I felt like BLG just didn't have that kind of killer instinct that it felt like they had in some of the other series. And I don't know if that was like a T1 nameplates on thing and you're getting a little bit nervous about stuff or overthinking it. But I just thought it was weird that they didn't seem to be able to, or at least not weird that they couldn't do it because T1's better, but weird that they didn't even like try it in the same way, I felt like.
So I remember that play clearly because it came after the play where BLG went into the jungle and they caught Doran. Remember, Doran was rotating down to the bottom wave, and they killed him. But in order to kill Doran, they used at least Annie Flash and full combo, and I think it was also Jungle Flash as well. So they like used all these really important resources, like Annie Flash is one of the most important resources, for that team because it's, such a big pick tool. And so they invest a lot of that and like, okay, they killed the Ornn, but then like you're saying, then they go to try and answer, the wave top and stuff. And so T1 ended up getting even more in the play afterwards. And so it just felt like it was more of future planning from T1. Like they're like, okay, we're gonna do this, prep the waves over here, and then they were still able to get even more value because like it was just the one kill on Doran that they actually had to expend flashes and stuff for, and it's like, okay, well, we lost an Ornn flash, I don't care, but you lost one of your most or two of your most important ones, and then we teleport and we still got a kill plus like the dragon you're talking about. And so to me, it felt like some of the old days whenever I would watch our teams playing against them, and I'd be like, "Go get him! Boom, boom! Oh yeah, we killed one!" And then you'd look at the mini map, and I'd be like, "Oh, wait a second, we lost like 17,000 waves and a tower." And I'm like, "Wait a second, what? We had to do all that just to kill one?" Type of thing. And so I honestly like felt for them because I was like, "Yeah." I've been feeling that for a while trying to play against them. So maybe it was one of those things.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was it you or Medios. I'm spacing out right now that was talking about how like the kind of like skill of the individual players is like not as crazy as it used to be.
That's what
You were saying that
I was kind of how when I said about the theory of like
the difference.
how
Yeah,
there's gonna be like more full 5 game series, less 3-0s and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And like I totally agree as far as like, you know, when you're talking about like laning or whatever, it doesn't feel nearly as extreme, right? We even saw that with LTA South, right? Like them against G2 and stuff. Honestly, some of their laners just look straight up better. But where I do feel like I'm seeing the advantage in some of these more one-sided series is still map play. Like map play still looks like on a different level. I felt like we saw it in Fly versus G2. I thought Fly had them dizzy on the map. I thought T1 had BLG dizzy on the map. You know, in some of these series, we are still seeing like that big advantage of how teams play the map, of how they play with tempo, of how they're actually getting advantageous lane assignments to, you know, to create edges and stuff, how they're able to like have a scaling comp, have a losing lane, but still somehow be up CS, be up gold. Like, you know, all these ways that teams are actually manipulating the map movements, I think are really, really impressive. And I definitely thought T1 was really on point with that. And even when there was that gold lead for BLG in game 2, because T1 had scaling advantage and I felt like they were just playing the map way better, I never felt like they were losing. You know, and it just got to the point where I remember in one of the final fights, it was Knight, like full anti-combos Faker, like goes on him, and maybe the jungler did too. I can't even remember who the second person was, but like maybe they got him to 30% with like 2 people full comboing the Victor, right? And he went this like really tanky build with Roa, and then what was it like? He went the Spellpen Mask, Bloodletter's Curse, right? Like he went that second, so he had a lot of HP and stuff, and obviously you have Q Shield on Victor and all this stuff, but it was like, okay, you like 2 people full comboed the Victor, and you didn't even kill him, and then he just flashed out and roasted you, like, and there wasn't even a Brahma or anyone there to peel. Like this game is just so cooked.
Yeah, I think Faker ended up getting like I think a 4-level lead on Knight by the time he was 18. Knight was 14, and Knight was level 14 for a really long time this game. He kind of just stopped getting XP. So, yeah, I think T1's map movements were just better, you know. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a weird game. I was somewhat expecting BLG to win when they were ahead, but I remember when Emily Rand was on the dive talking about BLG, she said that Ben is not a fan of Rumble, and it did kind of feel like it wasn't one of the champions he was more comfortable on, because when it came to team fight, like he obviously did really well in lane, and like he had a really nice like farm lead, a lot of CS, high level. But when it came to the actual fights, it didn't feel like he was able to get a whole lot done. Some of his equalizers were a bit off. He would like get turned around with his flamethrower. So it definitely seemed like it probably wasn't a champion that like he has played it a lot this year, but I don't think it's a champion that he likes playing.
Yeah, it is weird because I know that like there is that reputation of like the Bin Rumble memes and stuff, and for a long time like he was known as like, oh, he can't even play it, like, you know, he's not good at it, whatever. And obviously he plays it a lot now, but like Emily said, I know he said in interviews that like it's not a pick that he really likes. So it is interesting that he's on it all the time, because clearly they think it's strong, otherwise they wouldn't be playing it, right? Like he has 20 games on it so far, you know, in this split. His next most played is 12, so it's his most played by far. Has a 60% win rate on it, so it's not like he's doing horrible, but it's definitely not like, doesn't have that level of impact that, you know, you think of some of these bin picks, like you think of him on Jax and champions like that, where he can just absolutely, you know, 1v9 a whole match. Or even like when I think of like Bin GP and like some of these picks and stuff, and in times we've been able to bring this out, like Bin Aatrox, Camille, etc. Right? Like he has so many picks that you think of as those kind of like iconic picks where, you know, oh god, if he gets ahead, like you're cooked, right? And it definitely doesn't feel that same way on the Rumble, so I definitely hear that. But it is interesting. I mean, T1 just looked really good today, and that's like the weird thing about T1 is I feel like it's so hard to predict them, and it's so hard to like justify your predictions, because they legitimately did not look that good in the regular season, right, in the LCK. But that was the same thing before they won Worlds last year, And then it's like they have these struggles. Dorian looked like he was really not playing well at all in the regular season. Then they go into playoffs and they're just like Thanos again, and Dorian is like absolutely just dunking on Zeus and like, you know, stealing Otacon on Camille and just like super smurfing, and then they super struggle against CFO, but like Dorian is 1v9 in games, even though the team is like really struggling. It goes 5 games against CFO, and then they come in today. Dorian doesn't even have a very good series. Like I think his first game was not good. The next ones were fine to me. The Renekton one, he had a great flank. I think later on Orin, he had a really big impact in some of these fights, had some great ults. But like he didn't need to have a big game, and they super slammed them 3-0. So it's just like, it's so weird looking at sometimes their results, and it makes predicting forward, I think, really, really hard. But definitely T1 just has that magic. They go international and they just win.
I think in game
Full-on plot armor.
Yep.
Yeah. In the third game, when Guma got on Varus, he
Smurfing.
absolutely destroyed Elk and On. Like Elk and On tried to do the Xayah Gragas into their Varus Alistar, and Guma, like, he got the lead on bottom side, pushed him out, and then they tried to swap, and he almost immediately went to go follow them, and then Elk on the swap in the first couple of seconds, like, trails in the brush behind Bin, and then Guma walks up and he like wards it, and he sees him, and they like chase him down, and they chunk out the Xayah again, and so the Xayah's been like a level or 2 levels down by like super early on in the game, and they push him out, and then they wrap around and they end up getting the first blood kill onto On as well, and I was like, oh my god, like they are just destroying them so hard that they like can't even run away on the map from them. And it's kind of like destroying all the other parts. And that was with Faker dying twice on the rise in some of these plays. But I was never concerned, because I was like, I don't know, the rest of them can't even really play here. I feel like Guma is absolutely popping off. And in that series, you know, he's picking his style of champions with the Varus and the Caitlyn and the Jhin. And I feel like we might start to see some more Caitlyn pushing lanes, because as like bad as the Kalista has looked, we have had some very good Caitlyn pushing lanes and snowballing lanes. So it does seem to be going kind of that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, Caitlyn's look great. I think she's definitely been one of the probably more slept on picks, because it does seem a little hard to just like blind pick something bot lane nowadays. Because most bot lane picks have like, you know, some uncomfortable matchups or whatnot, but Caitlyn seems pretty good. Though I will say that game 3, to me, it seemed like Elk was extremely tilted. I think what he was doing didn't make any sense at all. Like, even at just his first recall, it was after the third wave, before the first cannon. Like, I was watching with Doublets and Sneaky, and they were freaking out, being like, you never recall before the first cannon. Like, what is he doing? And then he tried lane ganking top as Xayah. Like, I feel like you actually would get reported and maybe banned if you did that in solo queue. So it was I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he was pretty tilted doing that. Like, that just looked weird, especially because I don't even think he needed to recall from bot lane. Like, he was in an okay spot. Like, I mean, not a great spot, but I don't think he was worried that he would get dove or something on the wave. I don't know. It was super strange.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and maybe it was like a mental thing because it's in game 3 and everything's going wrong. Maybe he's like getting his own head, like, oh, I gotta try something weird. I gotta go base and go top before he expects me. I'm not. He
was getting poked a lot, at least. I know Guma was hitting like a lot of Qs on him.
I mean, Guma was insane, I thought, in that series, and especially in the Varus game. I remember looking at champ damage was absolutely wild. It's also I don't know if you've gotten to mess around with it much, Kobe, but Liam, like our stats guy from LTA North, made a tool which is really, really cool. I don't know if you've seen us mess with it at all in the analyst desk Medios, but like you can look through different things. You can like go based on the time, like see what the gold change was in time. You can see where farm was. You can see damage during different times, like check during a team fight. And something that's really cool is he has damage that contributes to kills.
I saw that one.
Yeah, so I think it's actually really, really interesting because a lot of damage is just fake damage, right? People are like, wow, this York did such a good job. He smurfed. And it's like, well, actually his ghouls just hit Sion for 20 minutes in a side lane and 0 of the damage led to a kill, right? And like, I think it's really, really interesting to see like how much is leading to kills. Like I remember in game 1, Owner, it was like, I'm exaggerating. Maybe I can't remember exactly what it was, but say it was like 70 or 80% of his damage led to kills. Like it was all like wherever he went, someone's dying, right? And it is kind of fun seeing what is just like chip damage. Not that that's always useful or useless, rather, because sometimes you can just poke someone out, it doesn't kill them, but then they can't fight, right? So it's not like all chip damage doesn't mean anything, but it's just been kind of fun to kind of look at. So definitely shout out to him for developing that, because it is really, really cool to actually see some of the different like lenses to look at stats through. We should probably talk a bit more about the CFO MKOI one, because we got off on the tangent. It started jumping around, but I just gotta say CFO is legit. This team is really, really good. This is the first time. It was first time since, oh god, was it 2012 or 2013? I want to say it was 2012 that APAC / LCP now whatever actually had won a best of 5 against China, NA, Korea, or EU. So it's the first time. It was like 13 years that their region had actually won a best of 5 against one of those big regions. They very
there's not that many best of 5s, but yeah,
not that many.
Yeah.
But they almost did it. They almost did it at first stand as well. They went 5 games against K-Corp after beating them 2-0 in the actual best of 3 before that. So they almost made it happen there. They beat Top. Yeah, Top was running it down at first stand, whatever. But they won the 2-0 there. They beat TL. The only team they didn't beat at first stand was actually HLE, which slammed everyone, so fair enough. But then they come here, and I think, again, like they have really impressed me. We saw them against T1. Like, they went 5 games against T1 and had top lane not gone so tragic for Rest, which, again, we kind of touched on that earlier, but like I thought he was trolling with his build and definitely played really poorly. I know it was a weird situation, though, because normally Driver plays Ornn, but I guess it was a combination, I think he said in an interview, of like Driver was feeling jet lagged, but also like anxiety and nerves and stuff, so he kind of decided that he wasn't the best person to play for that last game, so Rest had to go in and maybe play the champion that he wasn't as comfortable on. But either way, he got blasted by Doran, but like who knows, maybe they win game 5 if Driver's in. Regardless, competitive series against T1. Then they come in here against MKOI, and they slapped him. Like, the only game they lost was the York game that we touched on earlier, but Driver was, like, hard outperforming Mirwin in all the games that they were playing. Like, this Scion Rumble game, the early lane phase, he absolutely clapped him. Like, he was so far up just in the isolated 1v1 as far as CS before anything had happened. And I was just really impressed with a lot of their players. Honkyu obviously is, like, young prodigy mid laner, whatever. He just turned 18. I think it was, like, 3 or 4 days ago or something like that. And this guy has been playing really, really well in lane. Doggo was like absolutely smurfing. I don't think he died in a single one of their wins against MKOI. Like, he was playing really, really well. The whole team, I think, really impressed me. So it was just cool to see like how well they are playing, and that I think they're kind of changing people's minds and changing people's like thoughts just about their region, right? People always talk about like the major regions, the big 4 regions, whatever. It's like, well, they look like they're really, really strong, and I think for now you have to consider them as like above EU, right? Like, it has to be like they are a good ass team. They just beat the number 1 seed of Europe, and they did it quite handily, and they almost took down T1 right before that.
100%. They're guaranteed it, especially because of the previous performances. But like, every single one of the players had some really big moment. Gen.G was extremely good. Also, his Skarner game was super big. Setting up so much, and we have a lot of footage of Gen.G, but that's the guy that everyone's like, okay, he's always he's definitely gonna be good. But even talking to a lot of the casters and stuff from the region, they're like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of hype behind Honkyu because he's really young, but like, some don't like overhype it. He's got a strong future, but he was legit like styling in that matchup. He solo killed JoJo twice in the Aurora one. His Azir was insane. Like, and I have a lot of respect for JoJo, and JoJo is very good. And like Honkyu though was absolutely smurfing, and even in the T1 series as well, like his Swain pick was super good too. Like, not only is he good mechanically, but he's also versatile, and he's picking these champions that are fairly low usage rate, like in good positions when the enemy is like has a lot of short range or doesn't have super high damage that's going to be able to take you down. I was so impressed for such a young player. Really, really good, big stuff from him. Yeah. And then obviously Doggo is insane with, with the performances and not dying. And then the Aphelios pick in the end of the series to top it off and blasting yet another Kalista into the trash can.
He looked like
good to see.
That one ulti in the base when he just Infernum ulted and almost one shot Kalista and Renata at the same time. That looked like a release of Aphelios.
That was crazy.
Almost. That was very reminiscent of people like really hating this champion because that was just such a blasting. I think the craziest thing to me was just that game 1 Azir performance from Hongq, because Azir obviously is the evergreen pro play pick, and he was just nerfed several times before MSI because they don't want him to be in every single game, or like banned every single game or whatnot. But Hongq just like absolutely destroyed JoJo in ways that I hadn't really seen before. Like that solo kill that he got on top lane against Yone when JoJo just was like Eing to clear the wave, and then he just got randomly ulted into the turret and then followed when he snapped back. Like that didn't even seem like a kill angle to me, and then JoJo just died. So I don't know. He was so impressive that game at the end as well. He got headbutted into the team and just zero hesitation ulted them back and just started stabbing them. Like he had flash, he had Zonias, and he didn't panic at all. He was just like, okay, here I am. I'm just gonna stab you to death now. So
that was so tragic from Alvaro, though, man. I actually think they were winning that fight too. That because the Sivir didn't die to the dive, had Bloodthirster, and is like healing up and stuff. And then Alvaro Q flashes the Azir and then headbutts him directly into the middle of his whole team, and they all just get shuffled in the game ends. Alvaro had an amazing tournament. I think that guy was kind of like 1v9 in some of their games, but like, goddamn, that's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, who do you think is part of the 9 that he's 1v9ing? That.
Yeah, dude, it ended up being unfortunate. It's one of those things that it feels kind of hard to, before it happens, be like, hey, dude, like Q flashing and headbutting their carry into your team is a bad play here. But they did have very little CC. Like he was kind of their only hard CC. So I think in other comps you'd have more follow up and be able to like one shot him off of it. But I guess that's kind of how Hongq is just able to like stand his ground and stab everyone to death.
Just go. What can you do?
All right. Well,
but this team has been so fun to watch. Like I think CFO has been the biggest surprise to me in a good way. Like T1's also been really fun to watch, but all of CFO's games, like they are so aggressive. They just immediately run to enemy jungle. They're one of these teams that somehow is just like taking turrets, in like small sieges, like mid game. They'll just send 3 people mid and break the turret. I feel like that's not a play you see often at all, and I don't know. They're just so active. It's been awesome to see, and definitely makes me root for them as long as they're not against FlyQuest.
Yep. I mean, big shout out to CFO. They've made the tournament way more exciting. I also think play-ins was way more exciting than expected because Gam and Furio were so competitive, right? Like we've had normally in a tournament like this, you're thinking there's going to be like a lot of slams. There's been mostly close series, and very few like 3-0s or anything like that. So overall, it has been sick. We're going to take a quick break though, and then we will be right back after these messages.
Ready, set, go!
I'm at 47%.
Oh, I'm on 63%.
Man, I'm at 50%. Boom! 80%. Winner! The Kia EV9 can go from 10% charge to 80% charge in just 24 minutes with DC fast charging.
Welcome back to the dive driven by Kia. It is now time to talk about the upcoming matchups, including the one that all the NA fans are really hyped for, FlyQuest versus BLG. But we should start with the Monday match that is going to be Anyone's Legend versus CFO. Definitely think it's going to be a hard one for CFO, but I am hyped for the matchup because of how good they looked against T1. But Anyone's Legend just looked really, really good against Gen.G, so it is kind of like that order of magnitude harder, I feel like.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be an uphill battle for the Oysters, but I'm pretty excited for mid and jungle matchups with how cool, like how good Honkyu has looked. Just outperforming JoJo in a lot of mechanical little battles that they had. And then Shanks's movement in the Gen.G series, I mean, his overall gameplay, insane, but especially his movement was so clean. And so I'm definitely super excited to see them on the stage because it's kind of this like young 18-year-old, super hype, up and coming Honkyu versus Shanks, who has been working for so long and finally gets his chance at an international to show everyone how good he is. And he already proves himself versus the literal best player in the world, Chovy. So there's like massive amounts of hype behind both of these mid laners right now. And then if you pair them with their jungles that have clearly been the best jungles in their regions, like the mid jungle fireworks should be, crazy in this series.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shanks was insane. I think it's fair to say that Shanks outperformed Chovy in their best of 5. I thought he was like really, really incredible. And I'm pretty sure it was Shanks that I saw the clip of that like looked like he was kind of near tears after the series. So definitely was hitting him hard. After they lost that series against Gen.G. But yeah, he has really, really impressed me. I mean, this guy just has such a cool story because I feel like so many players you see come in and just be on absolute trash teams. They don't really get to go anywhere from that, right? Like your reputation sometimes gets tanked when you're on a terrible, terrible team. He was on the WE that went 0-16, right? Like, and he was by far the best part of that, but they literally went winless. Then I think the next year they were like 4-12. I can't remember what the order was. If it was 4-12 then 0-16 or 0-16 then 4-12. But like he was on some horrible rosters, right? And I feel like it is pretty incredible to see someone who was able to still stand out on a roster that was like that bad and kind of like slowly work their way up and get on better teams, get on better rosters, and now finally have the opportunity to be a part of a really strong team, a team that won the LPL, to get to go to international, to get to kind of showcase your skills. I'm sure that it just feels like so much sweeter, like so exciting to be able to have like all of that hard work finally pay off, and now have the opportunity to go up against the literal best players in the world from the LCK, from these other regions, and to be able to show the world like how damn good you are. Because as far as like skill to popularity or fame or whatever, like there's a pretty big disparity there for Shanks because the guy's amazing, but I think for most international fans they wouldn't really know who Shanks was.
Yeah, I know Emily was a really big fan way back when he was in LDL, and he got LDL MVP. And like at the very beginning, on the WE team that actually had Elk on it in 2021, they got close to qualifying for Worlds, but got knocked out by LNG. And then, yeah, to go so long and have to work so hard to get here. Plus, how can you not love him if you watch these interviews? This guy is like coming into the interviews with his like red tinted sunglasses on, always like cracking jokes, super high energy. His coach is giving interviews about how good of a mindset he has, good vibes he has as well. So I don't know that this whole team though, just they have so many of these good stories. So it really is nice to see anyone's legend have the success that they're having here.
Yeah, I actually didn't know a whole lot about this team coming into MSI because I haven't followed LPL that closely. But it is really cool to hear about that because to me, I feel like Shanks is not the normal story for pro players for the reasons you were mentioning. Like, I think a lot of the time people really like cheering for like the young players who have the really like explosive debuts. Everyone's waiting for the next Faker, right? Like they want to see that prodigy, like the guy who just comes in and wins everything right away. Like people love that, and people are very quick to write out the guy who was like 0-16 or whatever because like that's pretty crazy. Most people don't manage to go winless. Like that's pretty bad. But it is really cool to just overcome that and keep ramping up and then finally get here. So that definitely makes me want to root for him because like I didn't know a whole lot about him beforehand. But I think it's pretty inspirational because I think a lot more people are probably in his boat where it doesn't always work out the first time. But like that power of persistence, not giving up is definitely admirable.
Yeah, I mean, he's been trying since I think he first debuted in LPL in like 2020, right? So it's been like 5 years of him trying to work towards this, and it's only really been since they actually changed to this roster, since they have this new roster with Tarzan and like Flandra and Hope and Kyle, and like once they got this team together, that was really the first time that they were actually like competing at the very top, right? Like competing for the titles and kind of being one of those top teams. So I do think it's really, really cool to see. And yeah, they looked really, really good against Gen.G. I do think they're heavy favorites against CFO, absolutely. But CFO is showing that they're absolutely no joke, and I think there is the chance that CFO can definitely make it competitive. I feel like honestly they should just play Driver. Like he should just be their starting top laner. I do think he's a lot better than Rest. Even in all the games that I watched from them regionally, I felt like he was outperforming Rest. And so I'd kind of, like, from talking to people, I'd felt like they were kind of coming to the conclusion of, like, okay, like, it's just going to be Driver that's just actually our starting top laner. We're not going to do this rotating thing. But clearly they're doing it. Even when it's really working, they're still doing the swap, right? Like, they're 2-0 up on MKOI, and they're still making the swap happen. So it'll be interesting to see if they do continue that here. I feel like, hey, maybe if Driver goes in and you're getting blasted, then like, yeah, you should change it up. But to me, Driver has definitely worked a lot better. And maybe it is a meta thing, maybe it is whatever, but like I feel like he's performed really, really well. So I definitely would like to see them, prioritize him and kind of try to put your best foot forward, because I do think it's going to be very, very difficult against anyone's Legend. And it's like, you need to get any edge that you can, right? Like you need to have your best 5 out there.
Yeah, and it seems like the meta as well. Like, I know Rest was kind of known as being like the Jace guy, and I think playing these really aggressive lane bully tops. And it feels like we're not in that meta. Lane swaps are definitely very common so far at MSI. Not level 1, thankfully, but most games result in like, if one good trade happens somewhere, the team on the receiving end is like, oh, time to swap. Head on up to the top lane. Like, whether it's to save your top lane or whether it's to save your bot lane, I don't know. It's just really common to swap. So it feels like being dominant in lane is not as valuable right now, just because it's like, at best, you just get like a one-wave advantage and then you got to go swap and match. So that part's definitely been a little weird, but I feel like Driver's champion pool fits the meta well. He's like, tanks, bruisers, rumble type stuff. And yeah, he's been great.
And if you're going to play those carries, you have to slam, right? Like, if you're not way better than your opponents, I just don't think it's worth it. Go ahead, Kobe, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I since they've been using both of them for Fearless for so long, my concern would be, like, if they just stick with him, then if it goes really long, Tabe is good at manipulating Fearless Draft and, like, taking away, using champs that you want to use. So it's not even the bans that are going to get thrown, and, like, the amount of times that you use your champions. Like, they could easily use a couple of Driver champions, in game number 1, and then he throws, he uses one of his as well, and then they try and, like, defeat you that way. And so that would be my concern if they did, like, fully commit. And so they'll probably have to still use both. But I do agree, Driver, like, the team looks really good when Driver is in there. Like, they team fight a lot better. He is really good at finding angles for the team. So I definitely wish this team success as well, because this matchup is really hard because both these teams are like such good vibes teams and good mentality teams, and like you want to root for both sides, but it's definitely very big underdogs here for the Oysters, so they're gonna have to pull out some creative stuff of their own.
Yeah, I also think it's always really hard when you're going into a matchup as an underdog, and it's like your strengths kind of match up with their strengths, right? Where it's like, it's like, okay, well, we have this really good jungler, so like he can surely get us an advantage, right? But you're going up against Tarzan, right? And it's like you want to talk about, oh, well, like Kaiwing and Gen.G could create this like big advantage with jungle support, but it's like, okay, well, it's like Kyle and Tarzan are so good, so it's going to be really, really difficult, I feel like, when a lot of your strengths, are their strengths, and their strengths are kind of like more powerful. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't show up on the day and just like outperform and kind of create edges that way. But it's like, I feel like Shanks is better. I feel like, Flandra is super flexible. So he's kind of like Driver and Rest in one body, right? Like he can play it all. And I feel like Tarzan and Kyle are kind of doing what their counterparts are doing, but kind of better. So you do kind of need that X factor, whether you can kind of create it through draft or just like someone stepping up individually on that day. I think those are kind of the windows you're looking for to try to hope that you can kind of create some sort of advantage and create some chaos. And they have a little bit of time to prep for it. Not a lot, obviously, but tomorrow is a dark day, so they're going to get a little bit of time to kind of think through. And it'll be really interesting to see, what teams are able to kind of cook up for the game plan and for the drafts, because I feel like, you have got to come really prepared into these next best of fives where teams are having more and more data about your team. They're seeing your priorities. They're seeing what you like to draft, and they're getting more and more examples of like how to draft in Fearless in this tournament, like what success looks like for the teams that are getting draft advantages. So I feel like it's going to get tougher and tougher. As the coaches are like studying all this stuff and learning from all this stuff. So it'll be really interesting.
And I think that like AL, they just have bigger champion pools most places, and support is another one of them. We were talking about top lane, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, they're both kind of combined there in like a Fondre. But like Kai Wing plays a lot of engaged champions, and Kyle plays like everything. So the size of the champion pools, I feel like, make the Fearless drafting one of the big issues for the Oysters heading into it.
Yep, should be fun. Tuesday is the one, obviously, I'm going to be the most excited for because it is our NA rep. We have FlyQuest versus BLG. I feel like I feel like we could do it. I feel like going into the tournament, I thought BLG was definitely the most beatable of the Asian teams, of the LCK and the LPL teams, I should say. Not just Asian teams, because obviously CFO. But like BLG to me was obviously they're very good. They still, it's like, yeah, they lost to Anyone's Legend. Yeah, they had some struggles in the regular season and stuff. But like you look at the rest of the playoffs, they still beat everyone but AL pretty handily, right? Like they still got business done. In the playoffs, they're still a very good team. We know that the highs are like insanely high. At their peak, their soul laners are arguably the best in the world, like when they're playing at their best, or at least in the conversation for top couple. So the peak for BLG is insane. But that being said, like there's a lot of weaknesses that we have seen even here at MSI, right? Like even in the play-ins, we saw GAM be able to actually create some pretty consistent early game advantages. They weren't able to actually do anything with those advantages because I think their team fighting and their map play wasn't good enough to actually get something from that. But they were able to get 2v3 kills and 2v2 kills in bot lane and like make action happen and create advantages through that. And we've seen BLG, I think, a number of times kind of struggle in that way. And I feel like today, obviously T1 is T1, but like they had them running around the map. They had them like really struggling in how they were actually, answering these lanes and being able to answer what T1 was doing. And I feel like FlyQuest, one of their big strengths is how they play the map and is how they play with tempo. So I do think as far as like the macro stuff, I actually feel like FlyQuest is a better macro team straight up than BLG. My concern is just like pound for pound, skill for skill, like can we match up in the soul lanes? That's where I'm most concerned. I feel like I have a lot of faith in the bot lane. I have a lot of faith in Inspired to get advantages. Quad, I do think has kind of struggled this tournament. I don't think he has been performing, to his level. And Knight is a beast. You give this guy a big edge, he could just 1v9 the game. And we have seen Bin do that a million times. Like, I don't care. Yes, he has been less consistent this year. But Bin, if he is on it and he gets a big advantage over Whippo, like this guy is absolutely insane on some of these counter picks and some of these carries. And Whippo, I think, has had some really good games. I think he's also had some really bad games at MSI. So my big question mark, my big concern is like, how are we going to do in the soul lanes? How is that going to look? Because I feel like straight up, FlyQuest plays the map better. If they could actually, do well in the lanes, I feel like we have a real shot to be able to win.
I think FlyQuest can control it. At least I feel like that right now, especially like after watching the Bin Gwen game where he got ganked like 5,000 times. El Yoyo, well, first of all, the duo lane killed him, and then El Yoyo killed him about 5 more times. And that was just like, that was one of those ones where you're just like, okay, well, this is gonna be like a 10 death game here, isn't it? And FlyQuest, I feel like they can maneuver a lot of around a lot of the plays and like if they don't have to fight on bottom side of the map where they're getting pressured super hard, then they can set it up to go for their cross maps and not give up too much. So I do feel very optimistic, I'll say right now, that they'll be able to handle what we're currently seeing from BLG.
Yeah, I think FlyQuest, definitely going to have some positive momentum. I think BLG is probably not feeling very good after their T1 loss. Even just during the series, they looked like their play looked very tilted. I can't say for sure if they were, but I could totally see it, like if they are a tilting team, and it didn't feel like they were playing super together either. It was kind of like all over the place. So, maybe if they start losing to an NA team, maybe it just spirals for them because, that would be pretty embarrassing as a top Chinese team. So I don't know if I would favor FlyQuest, but I feel like it's definitely way better than you would expect for this kind of matchup, like playing a top LPL team. I think it's very close. I would not be surprised at all if FlyQuest took it.
I could also see us getting 3-0'd, though. Like BLG are like super pissed after losing to T1. Because clearly they were looking forward to it, so much as like, we're gonna get revenge on them, beat us at World Finals, and then like you're saying, like in that game you could see like they were going crazy in this game, and so I could definitely be like, oh, all right. Well, now they're back in shape, and they just came in and they're super pissed, and like Knight just goes insane, and they're just all making these insane individual plays, and we can't keep up with the skirmishing, and we're like, oh no, it's like 5-8 minutes in the game, and they're already like 2,000-3,000 gold ahead, and then they're forcing another fight, and we can't catch up. I guess I could also see that.
I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes the team gets super clapped, and then they just mental boom. They explode. They're arguing. They're whatever. It's a disaster, right? And other times it's like they have a really bad performance, and then they lock in, and they they talk it out and they fix it, and then they're just like coming to the next series looking really, really good. And so I had a little bit of that like nervousness about that too. I was like, oh God, what if they just they figure everything out before they play FlyQuest, and then they're really playing well. So definitely could see us getting slapped, but I feel like it's a real shot. And this is kind of the culmination of what FlyQuest has been working towards, right? Like, I think, no doubt in my mind, they're by far the best Western team. Like, I think that's just, to me, like, straight up. I don't think
Cloud9 close?
Yeah, I think Cloud9 is close for sure. I think Cloud9 would have slapped G2 as well. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt. And so, I mean, I think between what they did at Worlds last year, what they've done here so far, I feel like they are the best Western team, point blank period. But they clearly are trying to prove that, hey, not only can we like take some games off LPL and LCK, like we can actually beat them. That's what they've been building towards. They're the tier 1 roster with the longest standing roster, which like they've only been together like a full year or whatever it is. But that just shows like rosters change like this, right? Like you have one bad performance, one bad whatever, people get cut. So it's cool to see that they're building towards something, that they've stuck with this roster for a while. And I really hope that they are able to finally do it, because if they can take a best of 5 here over BLG, like even if you then lose the next series or whatever, like that is a really big accomplishment. The last time that NA has actually won a best of 5 against the LPL was TL versus IG in 2019 at MSI, right? Like it's been a really long time. And so, this would be huge, and I feel like this is a great opportunity for them to be able to do it. BLG definitely does not look perfect, and I feel like, they're going to feel that kind of that weight of that opportunity, and I hope that they, like, whether they win or they lose, I hope we can walk away thinking like, okay, they actually played really well, and if BLG beats us because BLG is just better, then like fair enough. But I hope that FlyQuest can just kind of like play their game and really, represent themselves well.
Yep. Our final game is Gen.G versus T1. The LCK finals that never got to happen now gets to happen. And right now, like, it's actually super hype with them meeting now. I feel like after the AL series, because we got to see more games, there were a couple things for Gen.G. First of all, Keen just popping off on these carries, the Ambessa game, the Gwen game, the Camille game. I feel like he is in really good form right now. And then the Canyon plus Chovy synergy. There were a lot of games where he would go gank mid early this time around, like the Nocturne Azir game to get Chovy's Azir going, the Sejuani going towards mid with the Rise as well pretty early on. So I feel like there's a lot of things that could be very dangerous for T1 because mid lane, if you get ganked early for Faker, Faker already has had a lot of lane phases that didn't go very well for him and haven't. And so I'm gonna still favor Gen.G as like everybody would have favored in LCK finals if that had happened. But I like, you can't help but be like, all right, but T1 at internationals right now, and they are performing really well.
Yeah, it's
Is anyone going
definitely
to
one of those
actually
things where like
predict them, though?
my brain says Gen.G for sure. They've had T1's number.
Stats. I prefer the magic.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's like at the same time, can you really root against T1? Because wasn't there some crazy streak where Gen.G had beat T1 in LCK 10 times in a row or something, and then T1 beat him at Worlds?
Yeah, they had a monster win streak against them. I mean, Gen.G had been kind of dominating T1 for a while in LCK for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, Faker, like his game 1 today on Orianna, I feel like he'll just whip out these really insane performances when he needs to. He absolutely has that clutch factor. The big concern for me is definitely the top lane. I don't know about Doran, honestly. Maybe it's just I watch unlucky games.
In CFO versus CFO, he was owning.
Yeah, I mean, he's not bad, but I feel like I just catch him in the wrong games because I see him do some sketchy stuff way more than I would expect, especially for someone like Keen, who just seems like an absolute monster. I feel like that's going to be a fairly one-sided matchup. But I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong.
Here's
But
the thing with Doran. Like, I'm such a fan of his because he seems like such a nice guy, and I feel like
that's what people say about teammates that suck on their team, though.
Here's the thing, though. But also regionally, he has been really good for a long time. This regular season, he actually wasn't that good for T1. But like, I just have seen so many games of Doran being a beast in the LCK. And then, he goes international and he has had these kind of like famous fall in your face type moments, unfortunately, where that really stands out. And that has kind of, I think, been what stuck with people in their minds. So I feel like this is such an important year in Doran's career and how people will remember him, because you have an opportunity now where you're on T1, the team that is known as like the clutchest team of all time, the team that, always wins international, always shows up. And so I do think Doran has an opportunity to kind of like rewrite history about himself a little bit and change the international perception by, having some good series and, really being able to kind of change how people look at him. So I feel like it is a huge opportunity for Doran. And I do think, like he didn't have the best series against BLG, but I don't think he was like that bad. I feel like the Orin game, he got killed a couple times. The Oric game, I think, was just a bad pick, and yes, he got punished. But I felt like he team fought really, really well on the Orin. I think his Renekton game was pretty good. And I feel like against CFO, if Doran didn't play as well as he did, I think they actually lose that series straight up. Like his Rumble game was crazy. His Jace game was an absolute monster 1v9. In playoffs, this guy was like going crazy. I don't know if you watched the series against HLE Medias, but like a lot of people have Zeus as best top laner in the world, and Doran, like, he was his father. Like, he absolutely crushed him. So I feel like when he is at his best, he is really, really good. And because I like him, like his personality and that, and I think he's actually legit good, like, I just am a Doran fan, and I really want him to be able to kind of change this narrative. I'm not going to say he's like Chovy as in like he's, same level as Chovy or whatever, but I feel like Chovy had that narrative too, and I felt like it was always kind of unfair because it's not just like an individual that controls everything, right? And Doran has had bad moments, but I still think he's incredible, and I just don't love the like choker narrative that he has. So I guess for his sake, I hope that he can play really, really well. And I mean, if they could beat Gen.G at a tournament like this, and he could have a really good series, then I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I will say my opinion of Doran is not a very like deep one. it's strictly anecdotal, where I feel like every time I see this dude, some sketchy stuff is happening. He's been showing up on like Track the Pros a lot too. I've been watching his solo queue, and I've been trying to learn Ambessa, so I've definitely learned some stuff from him. But he'll also just do some of the most insane deaths you've ever seen. Like I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even call it a limit test. He just like ran into a turret when he had no abilities up and just prayed the guy would fall over from heart attack. Like, I don't know. Maybe, I've probably just caught him at the wrong time. I'm sure he's great, and I hope so. But when I'm thinking more about it, I feel like Gen.G is kind of destined to win because it's upper bracket. I feel like T1, they're just the kind of team they are.
They peaked with their plot armor.
They will win against Gen.G if they're coming from the lower bracket for sure. Like, I swear to God, more times than not, they're just a real life anime team, and there's just no way they can be the front runners going into the finals. They have to stumble against Gen.G and then come back. So, it's got to be Gen.G at this time. I think it's I read the script.
I feel like you're probably not wrong. I'm not gonna lie. It sounds ridiculous, but you're probably not wrong. But I do feel like when you look at it on paper, it is kind of hard to still bet against Gen.G. I do think T1, even more recently, like you look at obviously the CFO series, there were some more holes in the game. And I do think as much as Faker is insane and is still having like these super, super clutch moments, his laning is not nearly as good as it used to be. I feel like everything else, you still got it, buddy. Like 10 out of 10, Faker status. He plays the map really well. I think team fights really well. He's obviously super coordinated with the team, like untiltable, ultra clutch, has all these things. But the laning, he's definitely lost a step, I feel like. And, he definitely doesn't have that same kind of dominance that he used to have in lane. And Chovy is that guy. Like, Chovy is the best laner in the world. And so when you have that matchup, I do think it makes it more difficult for Faker. And I feel like part of the reason that sometimes T1 has struggled against Gen.G even regionally is that I think as a result, it somewhat limits the champions that are like available to Faker in these kind of matchups. It's like you see him play more like facilitative picks, like he's going to play like Annie and stuff like that, right? Because I think that you don't want to put him in a position where Chovy can really punish. And Chovy, I think, isn't as limited in that way because he is such a strong laner. He can pick like whatever he wants. So I do think that is like a little bit of a concern. But it'll be I think a really exciting series. I think regardless, I don't think it's going to be one-sided.
I will say, I think I have a lot of hope for T1 bot lane because Guma and Keria are both playing really good right now. And I feel like you cannot let Keria get Poppy. I feel like Poppy and Nico, you like need to have your plan with this fearless draft so that he can like not get these champions because he has just been insane with a lot of these. And I feel like there's a lot of really good angles for him and for them in the series. Like I said, though, yeah, I still would default to Gen.G side of it, but I agree that I don't think it should be very one-sided. I think it should be an extremely good match.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. This MSI has been awesome so far. It is, 11:15 or something like that, though, and my call time was like 9 a.m. this morning, so I think this is going to do it for this episode of Dive. We're going to take a break. You all can take a break tomorrow. There's no MSI, so maybe you're taking a break right now while you're listening to the Dive and chilling out, getting ready for the next games. I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and that is going to wrap it up for us here on the Dive, driven by Kia. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of the Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else. MSI continues Monday, July 7th at 5 p.m. Pacific as the Oysters take on Anyone's Legend. We will see you all there.